Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Teach Your Guitar to Sing. And what we're going to be working on this week is listed up on the menu, up against the virtual blackboard there. And we're going to be looking at lifting chords. We're going to look at early chord changes. Which is getting your chord change in on the offbeat ahead of the next single beat that you might think the chord change would be on. We're going to look at rhythm hammering on. Now, people may be familiar with hammering on, where you play an open note and then slam your finger down onto a fret to create a second note a half beat away. But the rhythm hammering on is working several hammer-ons in succession or working them repeatedly on the same note to create a rhythm effect as well as that little melodic effect. Two fingers sometimes. So that's rhythm hammering on. Bass notes, we're going to talk a little bit about keeping a bass line going. Talk about triplets, and triplets are taking a space and breaking into three equal strums. So instead of going, you might go. So that's an example of triplets, and we'll see how that works in. And the song we're going to be doing to explore these things, I'll bring up on the board. So here we have Down in the Easy Chair, Bob Dylan's song, made popular by the Byrds and many other artists. And it's a very good example of a song that takes a very simple chord pattern and a very simple melody and repeats those two things throughout the song. And that makes it a very good platform for exploring different techniques that can bring a lot of emotion and a lot of interest to a song. And the chords we're doing on this we're playing it in fingered in key of G, so it's G, A minor, and C. That's it for chords. And I'm capoed at the 5th fret so that I can, roughly croon parts of the song to keep us on track here in my key. And the guitar has a very interesting mid-range tone when you capo up around the 5th fret. So the G chord becomes brighter. And it has a lot of power because you're in the mid-range of the guitar. You're not asking for deep bass, but you're getting a long, good, strong mid-range tone. You could also do the same thing by fingering key of C without a capo. G at the 5th fret is key of C. But in this case, I think there's a few more opportunities for some of the techniques we're going to work on working in key of G. So that's why we're working in key of G this time. So let's start first with the basic rhythm for this song. It's a skipping rhythm. Boom da da da, boom da da da, boom da da da, boom da da da. And of course, the blank slate, the blank canvas that we're working with would be to just play through the whole chords. As always, what we're looking to do is to take that sort of blank canvas and paint on that or to lay out on that like an empty stage some drama, some interest, some variation, some enthusiasm, some shifts of mood. And the reason for doing all that, I've been thinking about this last week as I was thinking about the next lesson here, is that I'm really passionate about the way guitar sounds. I remember when I first started learning guitar, I sat on a kid's porch across the street in my neighborhood, and I borrowed his guitar, and I played, Louie Louie. I thought it was Louie Louie on one string, and I was absolutely thrilled because I just liked the raw sound that did. And I was so excited to be able to emulate even a tiny part of a song that was, popular when I was learning. And my fascination with the sound of guitar has continued all these years. And I think that the guitar is a magnificent instrument, and I love to play it, and I can get lost in just even the simplest sounds, just the way a G chord sounds. If you just strum that and listen to each note, strum it a few times, little roll strums, that's just an amazing sound. And so we're so fortunate that we have this tool available to us. If you listen to your guitar from that perspective, I think you'll enjoy your playing even more. And the thing that also occurred to me is that when you play a song with guitar, it's kind of like a stage. It's like a performance. It's like a latent, ready to, curtains open, have a performance happen. And performances have changes in mood. They have drama. They may be subtle. They may be in your face. They might make you want to get up and dance. They might make you thoughtful. And this is all the things that songs do. So I think of the guitar in a lot of ways with a song is the setting of the stage, the lighting of the stage. Maybe it's some of the additional characters that help the main characters tell their story. So when you do a song, the song is presenting a story. The song is presenting a feeling. The song is presenting an insight. When you back that song up with guitar, you can have just a completely bland, empty stage and a little lighting, and it never changes. And that's the way many people approach their song playing, because they start as beginners, and you can just barely change the chords. You can just barely sing the song while you change the chords. And then as you move on to become better and better a guitar player, you tend to think about the technique of guitar often applying to the fancier things that you might put in on the breaks, having little lead lines and more complicated instrumentals that you can play. But I observe that a lot of people who enjoy playing songs and occasionally even performing them, whether it's at an open mic or they do gigs, that they don't necessarily think about the guitar with the same craft of performance that they might think about how they sing the song. So our objective with Teach Your Guitar to Sing is to take the focus and the attention that good singers put onto their phrasing and to their accenting and onto their vibrato and onto all the little elements that a singer controls when they're using their voice to express emotion and to tell a story in a song, to find the equivalents of those for guitar that allow you to use the guitar to support the emotion that the main character, that's your voice, is presenting in the song. And when you do that well, you get a synergy that's better than the main character and better than the supporting roles. You get something called a performance. So the spirit of performance is always in my mind when I'm playing guitar, even if I'm just playing for myself, because I love the way performance blossoms when you hit a vein that, like, the feeling of the song that you're having as you're singing it and what the guitar is doing somehow are on the same track, and now it becomes three-dimensional instead of just there's a voice in front and there's a guitar, ho-hum, whatever's happening on guitar just to get it done. This also kind of emulates what happens when you're playing with a good band. The members of the band come together and make a sound that is greater than the sum of all the parts, that the synergy of ensemble playing, musicians always are in wonderment at what's possible when you get people in sync and clicking and everyone's on the same emotional page and they're all making their instrument and their voice's contribution to what can happen with the piece that you're performing. So we're also thinking about the guitar as your band. If you're playing guitar and you're in your living room, there's your band right there. So do you want your band to just be one drummer? Or would you like to have little, organ fills in the background and maybe have a bass player going to doom 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 on the organ? Of course you would like that if you were in your living room, if you had those instruments at your command like a genie. So we're trying to do that with guitar also. So with all that introduction out of the way and said, let's move on to the how we can start to dress this song up. So as we start with this skipping rhythm, one thing that immediately dresses it up is pushing the bottom strings a little bit at the beginning of the strum and then working a little higher later in the strum. We call that high-low zone strumming. And we're weaving that all through these lessons, and you can see immediately sound-wise that gives you a sort of a beginning of a multi-dimensional feel, because instead of just having everything the same, with the only change being the chord sound, now you have bum cha-chanka chanka chanka bum cha-chanka chanka chanka bum cha-chanka chanka chanka. So you have your bump and your chanka chanka. Now you've got two things for the ear to latch onto and to follow, and the way our attention and the way our ears work, that actually sounds more interesting most of the time than if it's all the same. So as we can work little elements in that create little variations and differences, it gives our ears texture to follow and stay interested in, and not have the similarity fade into the background, in the same way that a good painting moves your eye around the painting, and it has texture over here, and it has color over here, and there's a certain shape there, and oh look, is that the moon? And oh my goodness, there's a person down there in that by that tree. I wonder what's going on with that person. And all those elements of that painting are now pulling you in and keeping your interest and making you enter the story yourself. So that bass high, that low high zone strumming is a kind of a first go-to a lot of times, especially with this kind of lazy boom da 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 rhythm, which so perfectly suits the mood of the song, even the title, Down in the Easy Chair. So we start with that, and I'm going to play this through at a moderate tempo. Just give your guitar a strum along with me on this. I'll give you a count in, and we'll just play through one round of those chords in the verse that's written up on the screen there. 1, 2, 3, 4. I actually realize I'm doing there is I'm doing the low zone twice in each 4-beat pattern. Boom da da da, boom da da da, instead of boom da da da, boom da da da, boom da 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 da. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So you're getting two basses on each, two little bass booms on each chord. Boom, 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 boom. And that starts to emulate a little bit of what a very rudimentary bass part might turn out to be for this song. Not a lot of rhythm to it. Boom, 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 boom. But it could be a great intro to a song to have the bass start just like that, very open and spacious, and the ear is wondering what comes next. All right, so this leads us right up into lifting the chord, because we're at a nice easy tempo, we've got a nice lazy rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. That last after the 4 is where I could be lifting my hand off the strings and strumming the open strings on my way to the next chord. And this is a double benefit, as we've seen before, that you get a little extra time to make your chord change, and you also get a nice open string accent on your way to the next chord, and it helps feel that feeling of that kind of lift that happens at that in this skipping rhythm. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that it makes it almost feel like you're leading with the instead of with the beat. A 1, 2. If you can do the lift on the chord change when you're moving to another chord, you could also do it on the chord you're staying on. Now there I did it when I changed the chord, and also on the 3, after the 3 when I'm still on the chord. I could just not do the lifting chord when I make the change, but do it when I'm in the chord. Now that's an interesting rhythm. I think it's a little disjointed in terms of getting that easy, lazy, rolling feeling that we've got. So you can decide, do you want to just lift on the just leading into the one beat of the chord? Or do you want to do both the leading into the one and leading into the three? And if we work with the principle of moving from the simple to the complex, which is, of course, the way we do it in learning, that's also not a bad way to approach your arrangement for the song. Also, is to work from the simple to the more complex. So you might do the first time through the chords, just the bass low. Then the second time through, get to the chorus, maybe do the lift on the after, leading into the one and leading into the three both. So I'll take that, get your mind off wintertime. I'll take that last line. Get your mind off the wintertime. You ain't going nowhere. And then do the double. Let's take that again. Get your mind off the wintertime. So that got more complicated when I went to the chorus. You also could save that till you get to the second verse. You could do the whole first verse and chorus with just the lift leading into the one. Get your mind off the wintertime. You ain't going nowhere. Keep it the same. There's a lot to be said for not bringing in too much too soon for two reasons. One is you want to have your tricks and your things you're going to develop in the song space themselves out to keep interest and to give you some room to change to. Also, your first time through the chorus is not maybe the best place to have a busy background on the guitar so people can hear the chorus. The chorus is going to happen over and over through the song. So if you think almost like one arrangement for the verses and another arrangement for the choruses, that's not a bad way to approach things. So that since the chorus happens over and over, I want from chorus to chorus to develop, and I also want that to integrate with the way verse to verse is developing. So another thing you could think about doing is just going back to a simpler thing for that first chorus. So if we're doing the lifting chord and the low-high zone strumming on the verse, we could just come back to the low-high zone strumming on the chorus. I'll just take the last line of those two lines of the verse. Get your mind off the wintertime. You ain't going nowhere. Ooh, ride me high. Tomorrow's the day my bride's gonna come. Ooh, we gonna fly down in the easy chair. It gets a little simpler if I don't do that the early chord change and the lift there. Now, as we come into verse 2, and by the way, when I demonstrate things, I'm kind of in a flow. So sometimes I may mean to do one thing and I may add a little extra something else in, because these things at this point happen almost reflexively for me as I go through. So bear with me if I put a little extra in sometimes when I tell you I'm being simple. Don't do as I do, do as I say. Or just do as I do. Or do as you do. That's even better. Okay, so now as we go into the second verse, we could pick it back up again. If we took the chorus a little simple, we could just go right into I don't care how the letters they send. The morning came I could just do that the same as the first verse, and with enough verses and choruses, you might want to do that. But you might want to have something change a little as you go into that second verse. You might want to have the scene shift a little. One of the ways to do that is, instead of lifting up the whole chord, is just lift up some fingers of the chord, like maybe the bass note, like here. Pick up just the first finger of the A minor chord, and then the same thing on the C, or maybe pick up the fourth string note, the second finger on the C chord. So it's good with each chord to kind of identify the easy pickup fingers, okay? And this is not a thing that you use in a singles bar on a Saturday night. This is which fingers in the chord are cheap tricks that you can just pick up the finger. You get a little different change in the chord sound that's interesting. You might want to not play the whole song with that sound, but as an accent sound, it's interesting. And it may be that all of the chords, all of the notes in a chord are pick-upable. E minor. Compared to picking up the whole chord. Let me just do that a little slower. Picking that note up on a downbeat. 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a, and then the second finger. 1, a 2, and then picking up the whole chord on the 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a. Now that's a different rhythm than picking up on the before the 1. A 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, and then the individual fingers. So that lifting chord or lifting an individual finger creates a different rhythmic feel when you do it on the before the main beat, or when you do it on the main beat. So if we're going to do lifting fingers as we go to the second verse, then we can think of the lifting fingers as a sort of a subset of lifting the whole chord. You can decide you want to do that lift as the to keep that boom ba boom boom ba boom boom ba boom ba boom ba boom ba boom ba boom. Or do you want to shift a little to the emphasis on the one beat? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we've got this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different combinations of things immediately that you could do individually, get comfortable with individually, one chord at a time. Take that E minor as a good test bed and say, I'm going to lift the whole chord on the just before the 1. 1, 2, 1, 2. And just, sit on your couch at, 11 o'clock at night before you go to bed and just vamp on that for 5 minutes. What songs does that remind you of? So that's like one element right there, just that lifting on the E minor. Take the first finger off at the same rhythm. Take the second finger off, same rhythm. This is repeating what we just looked at as an exercise that you could do with any chord. lift the whole chord in that same rhythm. I'm ready to start with, have the drums come in and some song start at that point. Um, that would be kind of like going through a little cycle. You could just take each of those in just that rhythm framework. Start with the lifting the whole chord. One finger. Sounds almost the same. Little different. Whole chord. And so there's like three variations of just one thing on just one chord. And then if you did that with if you're doing that with the skipping rhythm coming in, so that whole pattern shifts to the before the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 1. So now if you look at this from the whole span of everything there is about playing guitar, this is extremely simple things that we're doing. We're fingering E minor and we're just lifting it at different places in a simple rhythmic strum. And yet you've got 6 different colors that you could paint with if you're thinking painting, or 6 different lighting elements that you could set your stage with. If you're thinking about the guitar as the setting, as the staging, and the character actors that surround your main character. This is the way I think it's really wonderful to approach your practicing and your playing. It's very important to learn the hard pieces, learn Stairway to Heaven if that's your favorite song, or Blackbird, or whatever what the Irish call your party piece, the show-off piece that you bring out to a gathering or something. Learn those complicated things and do the practicing to develop and extend your technical range with your fingers and the chords that you know and all that. But at the same time, work your fundamentals and have your fundamentals become so natural that they're just like talking. And that's what we're concentrating on with Teach Your Guitar to Sing, is to have your fundamental elements be just as expressive as your fast and flashy things, but to be right at your command so that you can flow them through a song as the mood strikes you. Because as you learn these things, you'll see that each one evokes a little something. And as you start to put them together into songs, you get experience about, when I do this technique, I know it's going to make it song feel kind of this way when I move into this section. So what we're doing now is we're lifting fingers. We're doing the second verse. We're going to let's do for the sake of the exercise especially, let's do the 1-beat lift. Now, like when you go from the C, you don't have to finger the G chord and then lift the finger. If you're just going to catch that kind of bottom zone anyway, you might as well go. So lifting the whole chord and lifting the one finger are going to be almost indistinguishable when you first come to that G chord from another chord. But once you're on the G chord, when you do it before the 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do the single finger lift once you're already on the chord. The C chord, it's probably easier to go to the C chord with the finger up and then bring it down. So on the A minor, rather than lifting the whole chord before the C, because it's a much different change in tone between this. That's a very interesting open sounding chord that resolves when you put that finger on, whereas this is no different than our ordinary lifting the whole chord, before we go in. So this is, again, this is a subtlety, but it's a texture difference. So if you practice the C chord, fingered, and then let's do that now. Play this with me. We'll do it on 1 and on 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. A minor, using the first finger picking up. If you play the A minor with these 3 fingers, which is a common fingering, depending on what chord you're coming from and where you're going to, you would be lifting the second finger. If you're fingering it with the first 3 fingers, if you're coming from a full C, where you have these 3 fingers on the bottom 3 strings, and then second string, first fret, so you get that G bass note on the bottom of the C. These fingers on the A minor, they flow as a unit to the full C. Whereas if you're going from this C to the regular C, it's a little more of a swing, and even more of a swing if you're doing the full C. So you can use the situation to determine which fingering for a chord you use, and that's completely up to you. And many people, this is the only way they play A minor, and they just change, and that's fine. But sometimes it's a little more efficient if you're moving from this one into the B minor or something like that. So you can play that by ear. Also, if you're using this G, which is using fingers 2, 3, and 4, which gives you access to, which we're going to hit in a second, from that G, this A minor flows a little easier to that G than this change does. And conversely, if you're doing this A minor, it's more movement to get from here to here than it is to get from here to here. Now, that presupposes that you're comfortable using your pinky on that G chord. So again, simple to complex. Master that G chord by itself, and then explore from a given chord. Oh, from a C chord, look at that. How much easier is that to do that than to go from here all the way over to here? This is like going around the corner to the grocery store on the next block instead of, 10 houses down to the near corner. So all the way through your guitar playing, you can think about the chord fingerings that you're using. You can think about, I just lost my pick. Okay. Here we go. You can think about the different rhythm patterns that you're using. You can think about hand positions if you're playing more involved lead parts and things like that. Think about everything as supporting everything else. So now we are once again back to the second verse, and we're lifting. I'm going to give you a count in for a little bit slower tempo, and let's try that together. 1, 2, 3, 4, lift. And again, you could lift this finger on the C, or this finger on the C, or the bass note. If you're doing a full C, you can lift both those fingers, because that little chord change is an interesting sounding chord change. And in the G, you could lift just the 2 on the bottom. Okay, so let's take the chorus, Ooh Wee Ride Me High, with just the lifting chord, and then do the lifting chord on the leading in, a 1, a 2, a 3, 4, like that, and then shift to the 1 lifting finger when you get to the verse. And let's see what that feels like. Ooh wee, ride me high, tomorrow's the day, my ride's gonna come. Ooh wee, are we gonna fly down into the easy chair? I don't care how many letters they send. The morning came and the morning went. Pack up your money and pick up your tent. You ain't going nowhere. Back to the chorus. Ooh, wee, ride me high. Tomorrow's the day, my ride's gonna come. So you get two different rhythm effects in the verse and in the chorus, and that's like a lighting change between those two scenes. I'm just going to take the G chord and shift between those two scenes. So I've got a 1, a 1, a 1 to start with, and then 1, 1 as I shift. Watch this. That's what I want there. I'm sorry. That's the 1. Let's get it rolling. 1, a 2, a 3, a 4. 1, a 2. There we go. And then shifting. Shifting again, coming up. See, one feels like ba-dum, 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 and the other feels like ba-dum, boom, 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 ba-dum, boom. And that's, again, it's a subtle difference, but it gives you a lighting change as you move from one verse to the other if you do that. Now, you can also, if you're going to lift the finger on the 1, instead of putting it back down on the and, you could leave it up for the and. So you get da-da-dum, da-da-dum, instead of da-da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. Now, if you were writing a song, you would make a deliberate choice whether to go da-da-dum, 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 or to go da-da-dum, 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 da-da-dum. So this is an example of all the different little variations you can make just by lifting a finger and then changing where in the rhythm you do that lift. Now, the lifting the finger leads us nicely into the rhythm hammering on, because if I've picked that finger up, why not slam it back down? Now, the 3rd fret hammer on takes a little more force, so let's do it with the 2nd finger. If you're second finger in this G fingering that I'm using, or the 1st finger in this G. And then on the A minor. Or what about hammering on the whole bass unit of the G chord? Two variations there. Oh my goodness. Did he just hammer on the whole A minor chord? That's easy to do with that little finger grouping once you've got it down, because they tend to move as a unit. It's a little harder with that fingering for A minor, but listen to what that sounds like. So I'm going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So in following the pattern of the chords, clouds so swift, the rain won't lift. So it gives you a bottle-dum, bottle-dum, bottle-a-dum. Bottle-a-dum is the rhythm feeling of that first two-beat pattern. Or bottle-a-dum-da. Bottle-a-dum-da. So bottle-a-dum-dum-dum, bottle-a-dum-dum, bottle-a-dum-dum-dum, bottle-a-dum-dum, bottle-a-dum-dum-dum, bottle-a-dum-dum. So that's the hammering on with the whole chord or a single note from the chord. Now for the rhythmic hammering on, you could do a couple hammer-ons in sequence on the beats. Break that down slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's just on the 1. 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives it a rollicking, rolling sense that's different than the lifting the chord. It's different than just the high-low strum. It's different than the early chord change. So from the top, 1, 2, 3, 4. Clouds so shift, the rain won't lift, gate won't close, the railings froze. That's the whole chord hammer on. If I did it with just the single notes, clouds so swift, rain won't lift, gate won't close, the railings froze. Get your mind off the winter time, you ain't going nowhere. Ooh, we might be high, tomorrow's the day when brides are gonna come. Ooh, we gonna fly down to the easy chair. Now that's very much like, rubbing your head and patting your stomach at the same time with two hands. It takes some practice to get the hammering on both of those beats, plus the chord changes, plus the singing. But if you practice just one chord, on the one beat, and then the 1 and the 3, you'll get the hang of doing one or the other, and then do it on another chord and do it on another chord, and work these things bit by bit. And nothing says that whatever I do on the first chord, I have to do the same thing on the second chord. So I could do the whole chord hammer on at the beginning of the G. Clouds so swift, the rain won't lift, gate won't close, the railings froze. And just do it on the Gs, or just do it at the G at the beginning of the line for clouds and for gate and for get. Okay? Another thing you can do in here, you can go back and forth. This looks like a locomotive wheel driver rolling. And what you're doing is you're strumming over the sound hole, and you're strumming further up the strings. I call this up and down the strings for strumming up or down the neck. So it's a different tone way back here by the bridge, and it's completely different up here over the 12th fret. Now you've got a range. Can you hear that change through there? Now the change is most pronounced way back here and way up here, but there's a subtle gradation in tone all the way through there. So if you go, instead of going 1 to 2, 1 to 2, if you go 1 to 2, 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 the down 1, you're moving already, so the up is about here, and the next down is over here. Now, if that doesn't feel like this song and this rhythm, you know. It's a great rollicking, rolling feeling. So that's another element that we could add into here to keep some change happening without being too complicated. So if I go from that hammering on, let's say I do that in the chorus. Ooh, we ride me high, tomorrow's the day, my bride's gonna come. Just at the one beginning of each line. Oh, each chord. Oh, we gonna fly down to the easy chair. The next verse. I don't care, I'll let her say. The morning came and the morning went. Pack up your money and pick up your tent. You ain't going nowhere. Da-da-da-da. A little cymbal. Back here by all the way back. So you can use those different tonal positions for effect, and if you do them on like the upper 3 strings or the lower 3 strings, it's yet another effect, because if I go here, it's like almost having a phaser effect in your pedal system done acoustically. Out here in the fields. So the bass notes. And now back here, very specialized sound. If you want a really down-home country picking kind of sound, come back here by the bridge, so it's really tight. And the tension to move the string laterally to pick it is harder there than it is here. Now, that means that A, it's easier to move the string here, but B, it's harder to play fast and tight because you've got this little delay between when you start to move and when the string releases from the pick. Whereas back in here, it takes more force to initiate the string, but it happens almost instantly once you hit that force threshold. And that's why you see flat picking is often done not over the sound hole, but behind the sound hole, where it's tight. I'm only pretending to do that. That's not the style I play in. But you get the idea that you can get a very fast, crisp series of notes in a short time intervals in between them, a little easier with a stiff pick and where the strings are tight, because you're not working with a little delay between the pick movement and the sound coming. I mean, you're working with some delay, but it's much less. Whereas to do that same thing in here, I mean, you're constrained. You can only have notes so close together time-wise if the time to stretch the string is large compared to the time between the notes. Then I can do it even less well up there than I can back here. But you can experiment with that. So along the strings, another tonal shift in there. Okay, so we've got the rhythmic hammer on at a simple level. Now if we bring it up to, we're doing it on the 1 and the 3. Whether it's the whole chord or just it's a different rhythmic pulse. So I'm going to play through from the beginning. I'll do the first verse and the chorus, and I'm going to mix those up. I'm going to do that on the beat hammer on for a little while, and then I'll do the on the beat and on the 1 beat and on the 3 beat hammer on for a little while, and then I'll do neither of them, and then I may throw another thing or two in there that we've already done. So let's just listen to this, and you're welcome to play along, because you can always watch the video of this. If you go to strumstick.com, you can write to us with questions. You can write to me at info@strumstick.com. But if you go to strumstick.com and you go to the video tab, on the navigation bar, you can get to the Teach Your Guitar to Sing page, and I post each of the videos from the previous week's lesson on that page within a couple days of the lesson happening, so you can always review any of this. So you can either watch this now or play along and come back and check it out in more detail later. Let's take a moderate tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Clouds so swift, rain won't lift, heat won't close, the railings flows. Get your mind off the winter time. Ain't going nowhere. Ooh, ride me high. Tomorrow's the day when bride's gonna come. Ooh, we gonna fly onto the easy chair. Now look at that. See, there's a whole, just a little, a little wave from line to line almost. There's a little bit different happening. So the whole guitar part becomes kind of organic and unfolding. One of the greatest aesthetic lessons I ever learned was I took watercolor lessons, 20 years ago for about 6 months, just for fun. And the teacher, his name was Bill Senior, Jr., was a very excellent teacher. And one of the things he used to do is he would teach us how to paint trees. And when you're painting trees, we'd all be there in the class, and we'd gotten a little skill with our brushes and our paints, and we're mixing colors and we're applying paint to the page and to the paper. And everybody's trees look like these topiary lollipops, like a solid ball of green spots. But there was all this solid mass, and it didn't look anything like what a tree looks like. And his admonition to us was, you have to leave holes for the birds to fly through. And when we started leaving random openings in the tree, and when we started not going dot 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 dot, but we started putting dot 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 space dot dot space dot 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 dot. We had some space and we had some randomness in the way that we were putting the little dots that became leaves. All of a sudden the trees came to life, and then the little branches that we had previously painted could actually be seen through those openings. What a miracle. So when you're working with music, always leave holes for the birds to fly through. But at the same time, if you can keep a little pseudo-randomness about the way the guitar part's unfolding, it'll never turn into just plain old wallpaper. See, that sounds fine, but by the 10th time, it disappears. And that's what I mean by wallpaper. When everything you're doing sounds the same, it turns into a simple little blur that you don't even notice. It's just what's on the walls. Nobody looks at wallpaper and says, oh, what a beautiful painting of a rose repeated 1,000 times. They just look at it and say, oh, that's interesting wallpaper. So we're trying to avoid the wallpaper effect. Okay, so now the time has flown. We're all the way to just about to 8 o'clock. So I want to get in the bass note part, and I want to at least start to touch on the triplets that we talked about. The bass notes, if you're going to play actual single notes, by picking a bass note and then strumming. See, now we're doing, pick, strum, pick, strum, pick, strum, pick, strum, or with the skipping rhythm. But you can pick out, this is basically taking your strum and turning it into single notes. I usually plant either my pinky or sometimes my pinky and my third finger right down close to the first string, so I have a little reference and a little purchase. Some people do that just from their elbow up here, and they do it by controlling the larger motion of their elbow to pick the single notes. Some people like to plant, and I do what I call a flying plant, which is I don't just plant them there and go. I go. See, my fingers kind of hopping on and off, so as I do the strum, I can come up a little farther. I'm watching the video as I do this to see if that looks clear, what the difference is. So the hop, let's do the one note. At the point where my thumb is hitting thumb, my pick is hitting the 6th string, my pinky has landed. Houston, the pinky has landed. And that gives me a local reference point so I can play with a little more force and a little more abandon on that picked note, because it's really easy to just kind of nibble those pick. Like you're doing two different things. You're picking a little note and then you're going over here and then picking a little. If you can get that in a smooth, and that'll only come from practicing it. And start on the 6th string, get that in before you start working on the 5th string. I became a big fan of zone strumming when I realized that when I'm sloppy and I aim for the 6th string, sometimes I hit the 5th string, and when I'm sloppy and I aim for the 5th, sometimes I hit the 5th and the 4th, etc. And that's zone strumming. So if you're doing this and you're trying to do a kind of a strict bass note, strum, bass note, strum, you want to be super clean. But if you're a little more casual about it and you just want the effect of that, you can let your pick kind of brush over a couple strings. Whoops. In the bottom. And then if you're hitting the 5th string, see, I'm brushing 2 strings starting from 6, 2 strings starting from 5, 2 strings starting from 4, and I'm not making it be precisely 2. It might be 3, it might be only 1. You could also call that just sloppy bass note picking. I kind of like zone strumming. It sounds a little classier. And my up strum, I'm not trying to hit all 6 strings. I'm just taking what I can get over there because I have to hurry back for that next little zone there. So I'm treating this almost like it's a 5-string guitar or a 4-string guitar. But that makes for a great little mood shift also, because if I went from the big strums and now I go to it's like coming down but without losing interest and intensity. So you get a kind of a downshift, but it's not like it all went away. So this technique, so the bass would be, if I'm just pulling bass notes from notes that are in the chords, boom, 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 I could have gone boom, boom, so you've got this zone, this zone, this zone, and this zone. Each of those 4 wound strings counts as a bass note for our purposes. You can go down on the A minor. Again, if you're doing that really cleanly, if you're doing it as a zone, I actually enjoy the zone a little better. I think it makes for a smoother strum for the rest of it. It's less choppy, but that's an aesthetic decision for you to make. So let's take through just the first verse. So that's kind of a classic alternating bass. Switching to a different rhythm to illustrate that. So boom, boom, boom. you see how that the hammer-on and the rhythmic hammer-on kind of foreshadow the bass lines there. Now the next step with the bass lines, and go a little bit over time here. The next step would be picking up a finger, boom, bum, boom, bum, boom, bum, boom. Where am I? Boom, bum, boom, boom, boom. So if I run that through the rhythm, boom, and then now you're playing three-dimensional. So we're not going to get to the triplets. I'm just going to show you what they would have been. They're a little dramatic for this song anyway, but we'll get to them in a future lesson. Let's just, I'm going to play through the chorus and a couple of the verses here. And by the way, there's more verses to this. You can find them all online. So thank you for attending. Thank you for watching this if you're watching it afterwards. And if you have any questions, info@strumstick.com is how to reach me. And I hope you have a wonderful week adding life and emotion and a little drama into your playing. And, do a little homework, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Work on some of your fundamentals. And then bring those fundamentals into the song and see what effect they have on the way the song feels. And that will work wonders if you work that over the weeks. You're going to find that your playing opens up and your accompaniments start to get a lot more interesting. You may already be doing some of this stuff, in which case this may just give you a way to sort of organize what you already know. And that's great too. So have a great week and be well and be safe. So we'll play us out here. Two-finger hammer on the G. Clouds so swift, the rain won't lift, the gate won't close, the railings froze. Get your time off the winter time. You ain't going nowhere. Ooh, we ride me high. Tomorrow's the day my ride's gonna come. Ooh, we gonna fly down to the easy chair. I don't care how many letters they sent. The morning came and the morning went. Pack up your money and pick up your tent. You ain't going nowhere. Ooh, we ride me high. Tomorrow's the day the ride's gonna come. Ooh, we gonna fly down into the easy chair. Buy me a flute, a gun that shoots, tailgates, substitutes. Strap yourself to a tree with roots. You ain't going nowhere. Ooh, ride me high. Tomorrow's the day my bride's gonna come. Ooh, we gonna fly down into the easy chair. See you next week.